Today we are talking Fender Musicmaster Basses, and if you stick around, you might even win one of them. You can imagine which one we're giving away. Today we are talking about Musicmaster Basses. We've talked about these in a few other videos. I think they're one of the best values on the market, especially with regards to the original vintage ones, and it's something that Fender's never done a proper Fender reissue of. They're great short scale basses. I think they've totally been overshadowed by the Mustang basses, which I like too, but there's just something special about these old Musicmaster basses that I think gets overlooked sometimes. We have 4 different tiers of these basses here. We're gonna play all of them, see what they all sound like, and kind of talk about who each of these is for. Let's dig in. We're switching things up this video. We're gonna do things in kind of the opposite order. We are more or less gonna go from kind of the most expensive to the least expensive. So we're gonna start here. This is my bass. This is a 1971 Musicmaster. However, this one is super modded out. Not original at all. It's been refinned. There's no finish left on the neck. New tuners. Most importantly, this has a new pickup. This is a Arrow pickup, which actually has the proper string spacing for a 4-string bass. But on the vintage Fender Musicmasters, the original pickup is actually just a Strat pickup. So it has 6 pole pieces. It's not properly spaced for bass. Since then, a few different manufacturers have gone on to make proper Musicmaster pickups. Arrow is one of them. They're out of Hawaii. I picked up this pickup quite a while ago, but there's also options from Curtis Novak and Lawler. The next one we have here is a 1977 Musicmaster Bass. This one is all original, so definitely more collectible than the other, but it is a little bit later. This features that original Strat style pickup in here, which is maybe not the best pickup for this. We'll hear in the demos kind of how these two contrast, but unlike that one, everything is totally original here. This is the right tuners, right pickup, right bridge, all that good stuff. Fantastic player. We'll dig more into that though. Being from 1977, this is from the kind of last era of these original vintage USA made Musicmasters. They went through a few different iterations over the years from the late 60s up until when they were discontinued. The Musicmaster Bass would first appear in 1970. So the first one we looked at here is one of the kind of first iterations of it, and it would go away by around 1980. So this is kind of right at the tail end. To my knowledge, I don't think any specs really changed between this and their discontinuation. One thing I think is really interesting to note with these is that whether you get one from the early 70s or later, this is one of the last Fender models to still use nitro lacquer finish. By the late 70s, they were using a lot of poly. Some would be poly and nitro. These are all nitro, and this one definitely shows wear accordingly. This is a pretty rare bass. This is the Squier Vista Series Musicmaster Bass. This is the only time that Fender has ever recreated the Musicmaster by name, and they did it under the Squier brand. A lot of people know the Vista Series guitars, many of which were made in Japan. That is not the case for these basses. These are made in China, so a little bit more budget friendly, at least back in the day. This one in particular is mostly original, but has one huge upgrade, which is the pickup. This now sports a Curtis Novak Musicmaster pickup, and I do really like this pickup here. These were only made for a couple years. They come in some fun colors. This one is the Sonic Blue. They also did Arctic White, Shell Pink, and Black. We are now on to our last bass here. This is a Squier Bronco Bass. This is a newer one and a cool ultraviolet finish. This particular example is from 2024, so nice and new. As you can tell, they did not choose to use the Musicmaster name, but they did use the Musicmaster design and just called it the Bronco. Let's listen to all these basses. For the price point, I think this is cool. It definitely has a cool sound to it. It feels nice, it's fun to play, but definitely leaves something to be desired that I'm not getting here. I definitely had to approach playing this one a little bit different than some of the other basses, just due to the way the neck feels. It's no secret, but the fretwork on this isn't as good as some other things we're looking at today. And so I really had to be quite intentional with what I was playing in order for it to sound right. For whatever reason, I don't know, it's a bass that doesn't do as well with nuance, I would say. But if you're playing pretty straight ahead stuff, I think this still works. It intonates well, so that's a huge plus, and it seems to stay in tune pretty nice. Overall, for the price point, absolutely gets my seal of approval. Do I think this punches a million times above its class? No, but still solid. Moving up into our Vista series Musicmaster. This feels like a very welcome upgrade from the Bronco. Immediately the neck feels a lot better on this, and the Curtis Novak pickup really shines. Pretty much for these last three basses, I think they all sound cool, but this definitely puts this, at least sound-wise, in the class of the vintage basses. Feel-wise, I don't think it's all the way there, but it definitely feels a lot more like substantial than the Squier Bronco. Tuning stability-wise, once again, this one stays in tune nicely. Really all of these do, so that's nice. Very solid bass overall. It feels like a more modern production instrument. It doesn't feel like the vintage basses, but nonetheless, I think it's still a good recreation of the Musicmaster. Yeah, not a bad value here. I would be curious how this would stack up with the others if it had its stock pickup, but since this came with this Curtis Novak pickup installed, and that's gonna be the winner, we went ahead and just stuck with that. Moving up into our 1977 Musicmaster. Immediately this feels so much better. The neck on here is awesome. Nice real dark rosewood board. It's just right at home, it really is. Sound-wise, I actually probably preferred the Vista series because of that Curtis Novak pickup. This sounds a little odd just because of this pickup, but it still has its own thing. It's very warm, very resonant. I do prefer the actual like bass-based pickups, but nonetheless, really enjoy this. Very vibey, and value-wise, this is really, really tough to beat. Given what these go for and that it's a proper USA-made vintage Fender and it feels and plays like this and sounds like this, this is pretty sick. This is the last one we looked at. This is the 71, super modded out with the Arrow pickup. This to me is kind of the last little bit that the last one was missing. I think moving into this pickup just like really completes things. I think whether you do the Curtis Novak pickup, the Arrow pickup, or I would assume the Lawler pickup is pretty great as well, but I feel like the vintage Musicmaster with the more modern pickup is the winner, at least for me. If you have the budget to get into that, that's pretty cut and dry. I feel like that's where the sweet spot is. One of these old basses with this neck profile and just this feel, and where it gives you this much back, but then it sounds correct with that pickup. That's kind of the vibe. Needless to say, this bass is not gonna be going anywhere anytime soon. This might be my favorite bass I own, so yeah, I like Musicmasters. Let's talk about who each of these is for, as I do think all of these have a valid place. I want to talk about the two vintage ones together as the particular example that you're after. Maybe a little different based on your personal preferences, but I would say if you're somebody that has the budget to get into it and you're looking for this kind of sound, it's pretty impossible to beat the vintage one. There's not a lot of other options out there, so finding one from the 70s is just gonna be the way to go, I think. If you can find one some more players, great example where you don't feel bad about swapping that pickup, that definitely helps out as well. I will give a pro tip that you can swap the pickups on these without touching a single solder point. If you get a new pick guard and new pots, you can literally just put this guard right on there. There is one wire that goes from the bridge to the electronics cavity here, and that wire literally just sits under the bridge to ground it. So if you were to drop on a pre-wired guard with a newer pickup, you can still keep your bass original, just save your old pick guard and everything. And if you ever wanted to go back to factory, you could do it without changing anything. Obviously, whether you get a refin or you get one with the original finish, it's just up to whatever your preferences are. I definitely prefer original finishes. I'm not a big refin guy, but I don't know. The way this one came was just so cool. I thought later I'd probably, refin it in something cooler, something maybe more custom color, but I don't know. I just like how this one is, and it's never really changed. So for now, this is what it's gonna look like. I will say, because these are all nitro lacquer finish, you will sometimes find some pretty worn examples. So if you like the relic look, there's some cool stuff out there. Getting into the Squier Vista series here. I think this is also a very solid option. You can get these for, I would say, a little bit less than half of what you can get a proper vintage Musicmaster for. So this is also a very valid option. If you're trying to stay under $1,000 and you want to have budget to go get a different pickup, I mean, this is a pretty great place to go. This is very much a welcome upgrade from the Bronco Bass. This feels more like a proper instrument. Also, I think these have a cool collectability factor. Since there's only 4 colors, I know a lot of people will want to go track down all 4. more. They're all pretty attainable, so that's fun if that's your thing. Yeah, I think these are a very solid option. And once again, if you're kind of locked in this budget price point, these are cool. There's not really another option. There's not a Japan Musicmaster. There's not like a Mexico made one. If you want a Musicmaster in that price range, this is really, this or the Bronco Bass is really your only option. So getting back to this, if you are on a, $200 budget, maybe you're looking for your first bass, you're just starting to learn bass and you want to do something that will sound good with flat wound strings, totally valid option here. I mean, it's all here. It plays correctly, it intonates right, stays in tune. It's a bass. Does it feel as good as the others? No, not at all. It's not even close. Even just going to the Vista series is a pretty welcome step up. But it functions, it does all the things, and at this price point, it's tough to beat because there's just really nothing else that's gonna be like an actual instrument at that price. So I would say they've done a good job on this. If you're hoping that this is gonna be as good as the vintage ones, in my personal opinion, no, it will not be. It's still fun, and I would say for the price point, there's not much more fun you can have for like $200. Most pedals are like $200 nowadays. So for the price of a very nice pedal, you can get a bass. Even if you're just somebody who has like, maybe you have a jazz bass or a P bass, you have round wounds on that, and you want to do the short scale flat wound thing just to have that in your arsenal, I think these are worth checking out for that. That alone makes these kind of worth it. And you get cool colors. There's also one in coral, which I like too. We actually have it right now, so you're seeing that on screen now. I like this color as well. So I guess between the vibe and the color, what's not to love? We can get into the functionality and the quality here, but I mean, it's cool. It's cheap. It's fun. I would say the biggest attractor for me is gonna be just like the neck doesn't feel amazing. If you know, you know, whenever you see the Squiers that have like this light of wood, they always have a certain feel to them. This one's not as bad as some of the others. Feels like there's some like light satin kind of urethane finish on this, which is fine, but I don't know, it just doesn't feel like perfect. It definitely feels like the price point that it is. I'll say like once you move into something like a Squier Classic vibe, not that that's an option here, but that's where I noticed that those necks are a lot more comfy and where I go, oh, this punches way above its class. I can't say that with this. It's kind of in the same ballpark as like the Bullet series or maybe the Affinity series where it's neutral good, it's fine. While this is cool, our focus at FlashFloat is kind of on stuff that's closer to like the $1,000 to maybe $5,000 range, what I consider really like the kind of player guitars, the stuff that you can go buy and it will hopefully last a lifetime. It's anything from Fender Japan, a lot of the Fender USA stuff, Gibson, even a lot of the Japanese stuff like Tokai, Greco, Orvo. We love all that. But we still do some Squiers here and there, but we typically don't do anything in this price range. I was lucky enough to get a collection this weekend that included 3 of the basses we looked at today and was very stoked to get that stuff. But as this was part of it, this isn't really something we would normally do. So I figured what better way to solve that than to give this away. We want to give this out to one of you guys, so we're gonna make it nice and easy. Please subscribe and also comment down below. We're gonna give you 2 options. Either comment what your favorite bass is or comment what your favorite FlashFloat video is. We will be announcing the winner on June 26th, so you have from now until then to place a comment, and one of you guys is gonna be getting a fun bass. I hope you guys have enjoyed hanging out today and checking out these Musicmaster basses. I know this was a lot of fun. I feel like anytime we do a video on like vintage stuff that's a great value or just basses that I really like, the Musicmaster always comes up. So it was very fun to finally do a dedicated video on these sometimes overlooked Fender basses. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to hang out with us today. Don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, especially comment for this video because that's how you can win. See you guys in another video soon. Bye. If you enjoyed this video, you may enjoy this one as well.